I have a huge chapter, 40-50 pages on Vedic educational philosophy. Vedic education, like how do the Vedas approach education? Who is the child? What is the nature of the child at a certain stage in life? How the different purusharths, the goals come in? What is the method of teaching? What the psychologically, at what do you teach at various stages? So the different kalas, the different social theories. We've talked about what is the Vedic alternative to woke, the Western idea of woke, and the Chinese idea.
I think we should all, like how the Trump administration, what they're doing right now, they're looking at each and every department and saying, are you guys serving the interests of the people? I think it's time for India to ask that. Are you serving the interests of our children?
Today's Aghasur that you see comes in every shape and form, right from the UN bodies to our own Niti Aayog.
Namaste, धन्यवाद. ये हमारा this is day 3 for me in Mumbai. I'm delighted to be here. I usually used to come 4 times a year for decades, and then due to COVID I stopped, and now I'm coming maybe once a year or something like that, but I want to come more. It's a good place, and a great friend Ratan Sharda ji is always helping in so many ways. And so thank you very much for organizing this. You know, there are two kinds of, generally, broadly speaking, two kinds of research I have done. One is disruptive and the other is constructive. Disruptive is what is wrong, what somebody is saying that is incorrect, how to disrupt it, how to criticize it, how to do what we call Purva Paksha, and give an Uttar Paksha to fix it. Something is wrong, you have to repair it. That's like, to use a medical term, if somebody is ill, you have to get rid of the germs, that sort of thing. Constructive is like you want to give nutrition to prevent problems, you want to build the body. So constructive scholarship is building the positive things from our side. So we've written 14 volumes of History of Indian Science and Technology. That's constructive. A lot of things on Sanskrit we've done. A lot of things on interpreting itihas, not myth, but itihas. So those are constructive projects. Translating a lot of Buddhist works that were in Nalanda, taken to Tibet, translating them back into English and Sanskrit also. So we do both kinds of work. Now, in the disruptive side, there are several programs. One is Hinduphobia, another is Breaking India, and so on. Now, in the Breaking India series, this book is volume 3.
Okay.
The first volume was called Breaking India.
Yeah.
और वो जो Breaking India volume थी, उसमें the idea was to explain that certain foreign forces, which we call Breaking India forces, are trying to interfere with and disrupt and dismantle the grassroots of Indian society. In the south, they are calling it Dravidian versus Aryan. In other places, they are using caste. Maoists are involved, missionaries are involved. So those are Breaking India forces in the first part, Breaking India 1.0. That was like a 600-page book, and it became a very famous term. Breaking India got translated as Tukde Tukde, and a lot of people who are well known in the media, like General Bakshi and people like that, would take my book and go to all these stations and say, "Ye padho, isme likha hai." So this became a very common, idea. At that time, it was very difficult to talk about it. People were very scared that you are talking such things, but now everybody is talking about it. Then, Breaking India 2.0 was a book called Snakes in the Ganga. Snakes in the Ganga is a book which says that the Breaking India forces are not, it talks about not the grassroots and poor people, but it talks about the elite colleges like Harvard, like Ashoka, and it talks about corporate leaders of Bombay, like Ananda Mahindra, funding these things, funding the Breaking India narrative. Intentionally or unintentionally, we're not going to get into that. But the point is, whether it is intentional or not, it is their responsibility. If your family name is being used and your money is being used to do negative things, you have to worry about it. So we exposed that, and that's also a very big book, 600-700 pages. And that had a huge impact. Then we talked about wokeism in America, which is the new alliance of the left and Islam and LGBTQ and Dalits and Khalistanis also. All this alliance of people who call themselves oppressed. So that is the Breaking India 2.0. Now this latest book is 3.0, Breaking India 3.0, because here we are talking about how Breaking India forces are actually raising our children. So Breaking India force is raising our children through our school systems in collaboration with some government agencies, including Niti Aayog, inadvertently letting them in the door without checking them out. UNESCO involved. So if you look at what are some of the Breaking India concepts in education, pedagogy and curriculum, I'll go through a few of those. One is this idea of diversity and identity. Our civilization is very diverse. We don't need someone to teach us these things. We already are diverse. But this politicization of diversity is to create divisiveness among different communities through vote bank politics, through quotas. So this is where the foreign hand is very serious now. And this material this is not only during elections that they come and do all these things, or sometimes they organize some riot somewhere, but this is now being installed in the school curriculum from the childhood onwards. So that is an example that we talk about in this book, lots of examples. This idea of social justice, this idea of human rights, burdening young children of a country and arousing them to say your job is to solve human rights problems of your country, as if this little child of 8, 10 is going to be able to do that. Because child does not even have the basic facts and does not even have the basic education, reading, writing, science, arithmetic. They don't even have that, and they are being asked to do the job of elders, which even elders find daunting. Then there is things like sustainability. Sustainability is a very big word, and sustainability is being used to bring in, while it's very important to be sustainable, and our culture is very focuses on nature and its respect for nature, and sustainability is part of our culture. But the politicization of sustainability mixed and saying that sustainability requires social justice requires quotas require that all these people who are supposedly being oppressed, they have to rise up and fight against the country, fight against the history, fight against the constitution. That is what's going on, and that is what we are exposing. And this is a Marxism which has been morphed, modified, and evolved into this new kind of a thing. Now, the question is, when they introduce this kind of curriculum, how they use very nice, cunning words. They use things like global citizenship education. Now, every parent would say, I want my kids to be global citizens. But idea of global citizen is that you now have to follow the agenda of globalists. So their agenda through the United Nations, because they've infiltrated many international bodies, that kind of agenda of what is global, which means that you reject your own nationalism. Nationalism is a bad word. Globalism is a good word. So if you are patriotic to your country, nationalist, wrong, bad, saffron, fascist, those are the words to attack you. So globalism is a kind of umbrella which our NEP has accepted, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 2030, require every country to have these kind of projects. But we've interpreted all this syllabus and all this pedagogy to make the Westerners happy, because maybe we have inferiority complex, something like that. So then there is comprehensive sexuality education. Now, sex education is good because people should know safety, so you don't get pregnant, you don't get disease, you don't get harassment. So that is responsible behavior. It is not teaching you to gratify yourself. That is not the purpose. But comprehensive sexuality education is about sexualizing young children to experiment, to touch their private parts. Actually teaching them masturbation. Actually teaching them that. Teaching them, young girl like this, teaching them how you put on a condom, demo in the class, this sort of thing. So the curriculums are sexualizing children at a very young age. And not only that, but parents are not involved, they're not even told. And when parents begin to get involved, they're told to stay out because the child has their own rights. And the state has defined the rights of the child. Parents not. Which is why the title is Who's Raising Your Children? Is it the parents or is it somebody else? So since the state law has, the government has defined the rights of the child, and the rights include sexual rights. So sexual rights includes the right for gratification and pleasure. Now our tradition is not opposed to sexual pleasure. We are allowed to have sexual pleasure. But it is in a responsible way when you know what you are doing, when you are grown up, when you are mature enough to make good choices. It is not something that you teach a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old who is too young and not mature enough to do the right things, who could be even exploited. So this comprehensive sexualizing, that sexual education, is part of the UN mandate. It's part of the United Nations mandate through this UNESCO. So these are things that our people don't know about. And then social emotional learning, SEL, which again sounds very nice. A parent says social hona chahiye, emotional hona chahiye. So of course that is true. But the social emotional learning as packaged and as presented to the educators in India is a way to manipulate them, a way to sort of brainwash them, manipulate them into accepting these kind of Western agendas and foreign ways of doing things. So the input, the doorways through which this is being brought in are education department, public health, legal. So education is, UNESCO is doing this, bringing it through the NEP, bringing it through Niti Aayog, NCRT, they're bringing this sexuality and global, citizenship education and other things. And the World Health Organization is bringing it through public health. They're saying that, sexualizing children is a public health requirement. It's a health, sexual rights are human rights. So this whole LGBTQ and the trans agenda is coming through that, and it's confusing a whole generation of people. You have men with male bodies in the women's locker room and playing women's sports, and which is traumatizing women. So traditional feminists are against it also, because they don't want male to come into their, interfere with that. But it is considered the right. So why are they doing all this? They are disrupting society. That is the plan of Marxism, because Marxism feels that human society is full of oppression, and the oppressors have made the rules, so we should break the rules. The oppressors have made the structures, we should break the structure. Oppressors made all the sampradayas, all the paramparas, all the founding fathers, all the great rishis, all oppressors. Religion was made up for oppression. Constitution is made up for oppression. Family is also oppressive. So you see, you have to break up all this. That is why they're doing it. And so even the idea that there is a male and a female is a construction that oppressors have made. It is not only male and female, you could be many things, LGBTQIA, many type of genders you can have. So the movement is is dismantling the idea of what is called binary, which means you're male or a female and that's it. They are taking the examples of 1% of the population that might be LGBTQ or trans, making it normal and encouraging young children to join, to say, so young people are being asked in school, would you like to be a boy or a girl? It's your choice. Experiment, touch yourself, look at each other, see which one is better. So people are confused. So one day suddenly your child comes home and says, you know, I decided to be a girl, the boy says, or vice versa. And you don't know what has happened, how long has this been going on, and you are very scared and you want to interfere and you're not allowed to interfere. So this is some of the stuff that is, I'm just giving you kind of a guided tour of the book, encouraging that you should read it. Now, a lot of the globalists have also made a lot of indexes. ESG is a corporate index, every big company has ESG, DEI is an index, religious freedom is an index, happiness index, democracy index, freedom index, all kind of index. They have come up with the criteria. They are the referees who make decisions and judgment on what is your level, what is your level, what is your level in the index. And if your level is not good enough, you may not get investments, you may not get funding. So everybody wants to be having a good ESG rating. And this is very good business for Ernst & Young and for McKinsey and for all these people, because they send their whole army of auditors to review and make money, and you have no choice. You want that rating. Then they coach you how to make your rating better. So now you are colonized. These indexes are a way of colonizing people. That's how I look at it. This kind of a colonization by indexes going on. And then the educational goals, the mandates that the UN has set up in its program are, you know, we have not done enough work. This is the problem. India and the government and all that have not done enough work to produce pedagogy and curriculum material according to our own civilization. We should have had social emotional learning according to us, diversity according to us, comprehensive sex education according to our shastras, our ideas of what is responsible at different life stages, when you are a student, when you are in grihast. We have all kind of structures. We should have developed a curriculum within our structure. So when the UN comes and says everybody should do this, we should do our way. China is implementing these buzzwords according to the Chinese culture, according to their own value system, not copying what the West has said. The term will be the same about sex education, or sexuality education, or social emotional learning. The term will be the same, but the idea of what it means, comprehensive, citizenship, global citizenship education. The term will be the same, but what is taught will be customized to Chinese interests, Chinese nationalism. We haven't done that. We have not Indianized this globalization. We have not Indianized the globalization. The globalization is by default Western globalization and Chinese globalization, because they have their idea. And there is Arab globalization. Of course, the radical side of the Arab or Iranian, Persians are more into establishing Sharia. But at least they have an idea that globalization is Sharia. So everybody is trying to achieve that. Okay. So we don't have such a clear leadership, thought leadership, which should come from education ministry, culture ministry, these sort of things, NCRT, Niti Aayog should facilitate these things, but so far it hasn't happened. So our book is pointing this out. Then there is the role of apps. Apps are being, these agencies that are tied up with foreign NGOs like Planned Parenthood and so on. They are marketing, developing apps for children at different ages. And while the app teaches some useful things, it also teaches about sex and masturbation and trans, making it cool, so that the child thinks it's very cool to be the other gender. If you are born if your organs your sex organs are female, but you want to fantasize that maybe you are a male, they're trying to do all this manipulation to the human being at a very young age. And now finally we have AI. So AI already is a force multiplier. for good or a force multiplier for bad. So if you want to brainwash people using AI, you put in all these ideologies that I've been telling you about into the AI system. So then this AI can propagate these ideas very fast. AI can propagate these ideas faster than they would go with human beings. So now AI can even make a video clip, a fake video clip for you, which is customized to your profile, and for you customized for your profile. So a child, having figured out the data about each child, figured out what is he vulnerable to, what are his, where is he likely to go and click, what does his interest, can use characters that the child will like, and teaching him wrong things. So AI can do that. AI can produce instantly, 1 crore versions of the same message presented in 1 crore different ways, because it can just do that. So each person getting a customized, messaging through AI, that's where the cutting edge of technology is. And then because of the RTE, right to education, which is biased against Hindus, because RTE does not apply to minority institutions, as you know. So when they say this is the law of education, everybody has to include these things in their education, the pedagogy and syllabus and so on, curriculum. It applies to the Hindus, it does not apply to the minority educational institutions. They are safe from this. So this is very interesting, that all this happening is only happening to the Hindu schools, because the RTE says that the others are not under the same rubric, under the same framework. These are some of the problems that we have talked about, and it's not just defining the problem, but also giving solutions. I have a huge chapter, 40-50 pages on Vedic educational philosophy. Vedic education, like how do the Vedas approach education? Who is the child? What is the nature of the child at a certain stage in life? How the different purushars, the goals come in? What is the method of teaching? What the psychologically, what do you teach at various stages? So the different kalas, the different social theories. We've talked about what is the Vedic alternative to woke, the Western idea of woke, and the Chinese idea. So what is our alternative to that? So we are mentioning that in this book also. So I will close with that, because Vijaya will give you more examples to go next level into the detail, and then we'll do Q&A to have a nice friendly discussion. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for such a warm welcome. I want to start off by saying that the NEP and the government has done a lot of good things. We are just talking about the areas which need improvement. For example, I met Krishna Shastri ji recently, and he has been on a tireless effort to translate all textbooks into Matrubhasha, into various languages. So these kinds of efforts are going on to bring back Indian languages and to bring back Indic knowledge systems, and these kinds of initiatives have been going on. So it doesn't mean that the education department is failing all over, but what we are trying to highlight and put a flashlight on is the areas which are influenced by outside forces with deep pockets and heavy influence, and we want to show how these could just eclipse all the other efforts that people like Krishna Shastri ji are doing. So that's sort of the purpose of this book. Now, just to recap, Rajiv ji talked about comprehensive sexuality education. Now, there are 4 different subjects, if you will, which Rajiv ji mentioned, and I'll just quickly talk about them. One is comprehensive sexuality education, which has nothing to do with sex education, as you said, which is in fact directly in contradiction to the regular sex education, because the regular sex education talks about being risk averse and the dealing with the consequences of sexual activity, talking about sexually transmitted diseases, abuse, violence, things like that. Whereas comprehensive sexuality says, don't worry about that, those things can be managed. Right? If you get pregnant, don't worry, there's abortion. And if you get sexually transmitted diseases, don't worry, we have medicines to take care of that. But go ahead and have a sex positive attitude. Sex positivity is the name of the game. And sexual desires, pursuing your sexual desires at whatever cost. That's how the United Nations and the WHO define these practices. We look up to these UN organizations as some great organizations having a lot of stature, but in fact if you read their policy documents and their reports and their guidelines, you will find that it's full of very troubling guidelines and standards for sex education. So that's the comprehensive sexuality education. So the three things that it does is it gives rights to kids on one side, and it gives instead of responsibilities, it just says that and for those rights, right, that you get for free, you can just go out and have fun and enjoy yourself, and then fight for sexual rights from a very young age and be activists for sexual rights. Now, the other one that Rajiv mentioned is social emotional learning, which is essentially rewiring the brain using psychology, behavioral science, and neuroscience. So this is to take very young children and make them have a favorable disposition, and that favorable is quote unquote favorable to whom and to what. So it's basically a Marxist ideology that they should be favorable to. And how do you rewire these young minds at a very young age? In fact, behavioral science was used by the Gates Foundation. We showed in the Snakes in the Ganga, where during COVID, there were lots of people in UP who said, we are not worried about the virus and the COVID and all of that. The Lord will take care of us. And Gates promoted a program through Ashoka University saying that we use behavioral science and neuroscience to change the behavior of people, because they're just too dependent on this idea of karma and karmapala and next dharma and the Lord, that we should change their behavior. So fundamentally, they could change behavior. In fact, USAID, which is in the news lately, they have funded a program in Nepal to make them atheists. So this is the kind of mischief that foreign governments and agencies play. And we should be very, very aware of that, because they have a civilizational impact. So there is social emotional learning, and then there is global citizenship education, which Rajiv ji spoke about, and environmental education. So you have 4 new subjects: comprehensive sexuality education, CSE, SEL, social emotional learning. You have global citizenship education, which is called GCE. So all these 3-letter acronyms, which you'll be very familiar with very soon if you have children in school or college. And then you have environmental education. So all this is coming in, and so you have to wonder what is going out. And it's no surprise that literacy and numeracy is down. If you look at even the Niti Aayog's own reports, where they measure literacy and numeracy, it is down. And so today I just want to quickly talk about how is all this coming into India. So the Ministry of HRD Ministry has a Human Resources Development Ministry, has lots of connections with UNICEF and the global organizations. And the things that they cannot do through the front door, this is what it seems, I do not know, I'm making a guess. They are trying to outsource it and doing it through the back door. So you have public-private partnerships. So in the name of public-private partnerships, a lot of these things are coming in. Because the education ministry, as the NGOs all lament in their reports, that the education ministry has too many gatekeepers. The teachers also are not willing to teach sexuality. In fact, they did a pilot project in Jharkhand, and the Hewlett Packard Foundation funds sexual education in a big, comprehensive sexuality education in India in a big way. The same foundation funds lots of other things. They fund STEM scientists and scholars in America. They want in that they fund in America, but they don't fund the same things in India or in Africa. They fund comprehensive sexuality education. That itself must tell you, should be an eye opener. But anyway, in Jharkhand, right, they do this pilot program for 14 years, from 2010-12 onwards, and then they come up and they say that the gatekeepers are a nuisance, because you have parents on one side who, and these are all tribals who are aspirational, who want their children to get educated and be literate and get a job, and unfortunately what to them is they're getting this comprehensive sexuality education. Their little tribal children are encouraged to masturbate, and so they sort of complain. They say, these gatekeepers are a problem. They come in the form of teachers and form of parents. So they have a media campaign to sort of appease the parents and the teachers. And they say the only area we had no luck was the Catholic institutions, because the Catholics in Jharkhand, the Catholic schools of Jharkhand said no thank you to sex education. So and so that kind of gives you a glimpse of how devious these NGOs are. So the Ministry of MHRD has essentially given this job of sex education to the Ministry of Health. So you can bypass the traditional gatekeepers. I'm assuming that's the case. So the traditional gatekeepers for children, you can bypass them, and then you bring it in as health. So now when you look at health, you have a program called the RSKS, which is the Rashtriya Kishore Swasthya Karikram. Yeah. So this program is essentially a Trojan horse. It's been totally taken over by the NGOs. Now you have something called peer education. So they're bringing peers to educate other kids on sexuality. So you always use peers. In fact, the Indian math Olympiad team, they've been doing really well lately. And so one of the interviewers asked the guides, two IIT professors were the guides for these teams, and they said, how come, after all these years, the Indian team is really doing well and we're getting medals? And so the professors, one of the things that we started doing was to bring in previous year's winners, Olympians, and be a peer educator to these young kids, because they learn from peers really well. As all of us know, peers teach really well, and the young people listen to people their own age, and they have questions and doubts. They are able to clarify them with ease, without stress, and so it's a very effective methodology, and the NGOs have realized this is the case. So peer education, the RSKS program has peer educators, and then you have the AI. You don't have to go to your parents to ask any questions. You have Snake AI, which is an AI system that's funded by the UNFPA. And then you have adolescent clinics where you have services to abortion. In all these little villages, you have services to abortion and sex education. And just in case you're not on any of these platforms, you even have an adolescent sex educator right there in these clinics. And these peer educators and the adolescent clinics are all funded and stocked up by the NGOs. So that is how you bypass the MHRD, the education ministry, and you go through the health ministry. And nobody really checks what's going on with these health ministries. So you also have platforms where these sex ed classes are given. You have AI bots, so young adolescents can easily access information. And you have peer educators who are essentially brainwashed, and the NGOs do it. Now, as far as the scaling up, so it's just so organized. It's amazing. We can learn a lesson or two from them. So they know how to conduct a pilot project, get lessons from that. So Jharkhand was 14 years of just being a pilot project for the world. And then these learnings could be, adopted in Africa and other places. So there's a pilot project, and then you have NGOs like the International Planned Parenthood Foundation, who have various affiliates. They have their own member organizations, right? So one is in charge of producing material, the other is in charge of making research. There is the Guttmacher Institute, which will do surveys and research. There is the Rutgers Institute, which does only scale up of these programs. So scaling up is a huge part of it. So in Jharkhand, they had a pilot and then they scaled it up. Yeah, so the pilot project was also, they look at what are the issues in scaling up. Now, in scaling up, we have our own snakes in the Ganga, as we had called it. We have the HCL Foundation and the Tata's own Population Foundation of India. So Ratan Tata, the late Ratan Tata was the chairman of this institute, and Population Foundation, like all globalists, very rich people, are very concerned about population. They don't want a lot of us on this earth walking around, and they're doing whatever they can to bring the population down in the name of sustainability and environmental education and all of that. So the role of HCL, in fact, I just remembered, recently, a few months ago, there was a news article which said the Shivnada school put out a survey where they asked their children to identify as male, female or non-binary, and many parents were flummoxed. They said, where did this non-binary thing, what does that even mean? So if you connect the dots, the HCL Foundation is big into scaling up teacher training for comprehensive sexuality education. So they have platforms, they've given computers, and they're training the teachers of India so that they can provide comprehensive sexuality education. Then, of course, you have the Population Foundation of India. They go through to the grassroots and train the teachers. Now, you have, the government has said that you can have, through the Ayushman Bharat program, you can have every school in India will have 2 teachers to provide comprehensive sexuality education. So that is from the tax money. Yeah. So our children can't read, our children can't write. In fact, if you look at it, more than 50% of 8th graders all over India can't read or write at a 2nd grade level. Yeah, but we have 2 ambassadors, CSE ambassadors, comprehensive sexuality education ambassadors in every school, who are trained, of course, by Population Foundation of India, and they have MOUs with every state, Bihar, UP, everywhere, it's all over, and to give our children sex education. So this is a travesty. This is really sad that just as the millions, hundreds of millions of poor people are just about coming out of poverty and want a chance for their next generation, what we are doing to them is providing sex education. Yeah. So this is just the part of sex education. There is social emotional learning as well. Now, the UDAN project, of which I mentioned in Jharkhand, which was the pilot project, was called UDAN. Of course, the names are really nice. It's like, okay, fly away with freedom. That's kind of the imagery you get. But the UDAN project, when it first started, and they tried to tweak it, and many of the states like Gujarat and Rajasthan said no. We don't want this. And there was, if you look at from 2003 onwards, there's been, or 2009, there was another effort, and all these states said, no, thank you, we don't want it. But what has changed? Now UDAN is in Rajasthan, UDAN is in Gujarat, UDAN is like the project that every state wants to copy. It is all because of sustainable development goals. The UN wants every country, and within every country, every state should be compliant with the sustainable development goals. So every state now is adopting these things. Now, the other little mischief maker in the government, as far as what we can see, is the Niti Aayog. So the Niti Aayog, if you look at the NEP, and the NEP says, in fact, even says one of the goals of the NEP is to align with the sustainable development goals. It actually says that. And we haven't just bothered to go and see what are the sustainable development goals and what is the education policy that's going to align with that. Because all of us were excited about ending knowledge systems and getting education in different bhashas and things like that. All those things are also there. But one of the core goals of the NEP is to align with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And I don't know if the people of India really voted for this and if they want this. Because if you go in and see what the sustainable development goals are, it asks for these kinds of sex education, this kind of social emotional learning, and all these other subjects that we never bargained for. So the Niti Aayog essentially has Population Foundation of India, HCL, these are the insider, like Piramal Foundation. These are the sort of the policy consultants and education partners that advise the Niti Aayog from within. They also have the UN. I mean, it's an amazing network. All kinds of, it's a chart like this where you have the US aid, which is in the news. US aid is of course funding a Niti Aayog project. Niti Aayog itself invested startup money through its Atal Incubation Center. 2 startups, one for social emotional learning, the other for comprehensive sexuality education. So what the government can't do through the front door, they get it outsourced, right? So you've invested taxpayer money in these 2 ventures, and the same venture, the US aid, is considered now openly by the Trump administration as a criminal organization. It's a CIA front. It brings down governments. It topples. I mean, Bangladesh happened because of US aid. Atheism in Nepal is a project of the US aid. Disinformation, startups everywhere for information that they don't consider favorable. Those are all the projects of the US aid. So the US aid actually is funding a program right now called DAPT-MATE, which is an SEL program, which also the Niti Aayog has funded. You have the World Bank, the UNDP, you have the UNICEF, you have the International Planned Parenthood. They're all funding. In fact, the International Planned Parenthood Foundation, which basically makes money out of abortions, their revenue is around $2 billion with a B. And they essentially said that due to their funding, in the annual report, they say that they had 3 successful policy changes in India because of the funding. Yeah, so that's the lobbying part. So the Niti Aayog is the center where foreign organizations can lobby. The Niti Aayog recommends legislation to the government passes it, and the minute the government passes this legislation that we should have comprehensive sexuality education all over, right? All over India and every school, what happens is these very same NGOs go on the other side and have a plug-and-play package on sex education. They have programs, they have platforms, they have AI bots, everything right there to plug and play. So they lobby on one side. Once it gets passed, you have, so who indeed is running the education system? And we're all worried about NCRT and National Curriculum Framework, and we're just looking at the wrong place. So I think we should all, like how the Trump administration, what they're doing right now, they're looking at each and every department and saying, are you guys serving the interests of the people? I think it's time for India to ask that. Are you serving the interests of our children? Yeah. Thank you.
End of these 2 short lectures, I think many parents will be highly worried. They should be worried, and I think they need to go and talk to their neighbors also and tell them what's going on. This book that you see there, which is being released today, you see the blue and greenish color, and there is very intriguing kind of cover. It's very evocative cover. The book begins from there, so I'll just read one section, one para from this, so you can understand the imagery. The tale of Aghasur comes in Bhagavad Katha. The image of the front of this cover shows the malevolent snake Aghasur, Asur general who is committed to adharma. This is the tale from the Bhagavad Purana. Driven by his malice, Aghasur has devised a sinister plan to wipe out all the innocent children of the holy city of Vrindavan in Mathura, where Lord Krishna is believed to have spent his early years. Aghasur assumed the form of an 8-mile-long serpent, disguising his open mouth to look like the entrance of a mysterious cavern in a mountain. His enticing trap appeared like a serene path through a beautiful meadow. His open mouth awaited the unsuspecting children. The children were engrossed in play, mimicking peacocks and chasing birds' shadows. When they came upon upon Aghasur's mouth, they assumed it to be a mountain cave. Lured by the beautiful path, the children entered without hesitation. Unaware of the impending doom, elders and parents who were typically keeping a close, watchful eye were absent. Now just see the imagery from what these two eminent authors has talked about. Aghasur intended to close his jaw and destroy them from within, exploiting their joyful innocence as a bait to suffocate and kill them. The Bhagavad Purana describes the dramatic event as follows. The last para. His lower lips rested on the surface of the earth, his upper lips touching the cloud in the sky. The borders of his mouth resembling the sides of a big cave in a mountain, and the middle of his mouth was as dark as possible. His tongue resembled a broad traffic way. His breath was like a warm wind, and his eyes blazed like fire. The children assumed it must be a beautiful scenic spot of Vrindavan. Later, when they recognized it to look like a giant snake, they remained unafraid, assuming it to be a statue made in the shape of a great snake for their enjoyment. Seeing this, Lord Krishna came to their rescue and killed Aghasur. So today's Aghasur that you see comes in every shape and form, the UN bodies to our own Niti Aayog. And with this opening remark, I welcome questions. They will answer sitting there, so anybody can raise their hand and ask question.
Ma'am, everyone. So my name is Janil. I'm 27. I work in Mumbai in real estate. But a lot of questions I feel come from my experience living here as well as spending the past 8 years in America. So I had a couple of questions. I feel one question was, for example, it's very evident that DEI and all of these things have been built around harming external societies which are growing economies basically. You want to basically counterbalance India with all of these external issues because it's a growing economy. But what you see is all of this DEI wokeism, gender fluidity, all of these issues are also to a great extent eroding the Western civilization. So what I wonder is about the deep state, whatever you want to call it, is it they want to disturb all civilizations? Is it specifically to do with external civilizations?
Great question. What's the motive for the ultra-rich to be part of this? And this question is asked, and we addressed it in the Snakes in the Ganga. The ultra-rich made their money in capitalism. So why would they want to disrupt the very structure through which they made their money? It seemed like contradiction. Why would us and many others, the guy in India was a richer man and more dangerous, and the book we wrote earlier exposed him and he's shut down in India. That's one of the impacts we've had. So why are they doing such things? For one thing, when people have more money than they know what to do with, then the arrogance says, I'm going to change the world, I'm going to create a new world order, I am the visionary of the world. Bill Gates is like that. These people, at some point in time, they want to use the money for power and their sense of control over other people. But you see, when and it's very fashionable to go left wing, very idealistic to go left wing. America has gotten a lot of Marxism. America is the center of Marxism, which is now wokeism in the form of wokeism. Wokeism is just a packaging of Marxism in another way. So US is the head of that, while US is also a capitalist country. So you see, when you practice this, the effect on a strong country like America is not as much as the effect on a weak country. It's like if you do tod-phod, your house may be so strong कि थोड़ी तोड़-फोड़ हो जाएगी, but it will survive because it's built very strong. But the fellow with the jhuggi jhopdi, he'll be just finished off, wiped out. You see, the effect is not the same on different people. So the effect on United States will be less because United States can bounce back. Now Trump has come, he wants no more nonsense like this. He's going to boom within a couple of years, shut down all DEIs, this and that. Whereas the impact on a country like India, firstly, Indians have inferiority complex. They brought this American thing. They feel very good about it. कि हम भी American बन गए हैं. अब हम we are not white skin, चलो brown skin American तो बन गए हैं. If we are not, we don't have all the facilities and we can think like them. कुछ तो मिला ना. So Indians are kind of confused it's a tragedy that the leaders have allowed this to happen. The leaders and the elites, both in industry and in government, have failed because they should have taken care of all this much strongly. So I would say that if regarding is America being destroyed, yes, America is being destroyed by the woke left wing of the Democratic Party. They've been doing it. And by the way, I've been a Democrat most of my life in the US. I lived there 55 years and I've funded and voted and all that. But from the time of Obama, I saw that the Democrats became too far left and became woke. During his presidency, it happened, all this stuff. And so I stopped supporting and all that. Now, the United States is self-correcting. You know, it goes through this pendulum this way, that way, and it's self-correcting. It's a very strong country. You may think that everything is forgotten, this, or we lose it. But United States has got qualities. I mean, I can tell you a lot more if you are interested on what are its strengths such that it's not going to be easily, dismantled. So Trump is doing very strong, courageous things because he got a mandate from the population precisely against DEI kind of thing. Woke and all this education is in the United States, and now the people don't like it, they want to throw it out, and this is going to be thrown out. The problem is in India we don't have that because we're not self-critical. You're not allowed to be critical. You're not allowed to openly criticize. You have to be, it's taboo to criticize. You may be blacklisted if you criticize, even though you have good intentions. So maybe there's a lack of security, feeling of security, maybe people feel insecure, they don't like criticism. So if you don't have critiques, this kind of critiques and think tanks that reflect, then you know what this can go on for a long time. Now there is no self-correcting mechanism in India which identifies these problems. Our books are the first and only so far that have pointed this out. And now the Trump has made it world news. World news. So now the question is, will we now follow Americans out of DEI like we followed Americans into DEI? You follow? So that is my thought on what's the impact on America and what's the impact on India.
I just want to answer his question with just one or two more points. This woke and this form of wokeism is also used as a foreign, a State Department strategy. For example, we saw that USAID funded transgender comics in Peru to mess with the minds of young people in Peru. In fact, Sheikh Hasina was brought down by the USAID funding of transgender groups, and that's how Bangladesh government toppled. Now, China interestingly also uses this, knows the value of this LGBTQ plus movement, and they have criticized in their South China Morning Post, they've criticized India. They don't let any of this come into China, but they have criticized India, saying that India doesn't have enough drag queen story hours for little children, and the sex education is not consistent. It's very inconsistent in India. So this is how people can fund money to these different groups to break down society. So it's actually a very, very powerful dismantling tool, not just for within a country, but if you want to use it as a weapon to bring down another country. We've seen examples. So so we have to take these things seriously.
USAID was funding the Shahi Export, and Shahi Export के जो owner है, he is the husband of Sonam Kapoor, and we know Sonam Kapoor is very, she's very vocal about, कि हम शर्मिंदा हैं, हिंदू हैं, हम शर्मिंदा हैं, इस तरह के जितने भी ये चीजें थी. Now we know कि कहाँ से funding आप कहाँ से लेंगी, ये जितने भी wokeism वाले जो चीजें, जितने भी इन्होंने ये चीजें.
Again, what is ironical about the entire American establishment promoting this Marxist agenda is that maybe 60 years down the line, there was public education in America where they wanted people to identify forms of communism in their society. But now you see that the same establishment which did that, be it the CIA, be it the military complex, they end up, including the Democrat Party, I'm not talking about the Republican Party, they have always been very about Marxism. But the Democrats, which were 60 years down the line, very about Marxism, today ironically they have taken to what's the stance which is clearly, as you said, a form of Marxism. So why do you think that the people who were earlier very wary of this Marxist trend coming from the Soviet Union, KGB, they are today working towards that direction?
Good question. what is the history of Marxism in America? That's the question, because it's gone through certain stages. So there's a 100-page chapter on how America becomes Marxist in the Snakes in the Ganga. Right in the beginning, it's my favorite part in the whole thing, because it gives you a history. So let me just, for those who don't know, let me just give you an introduction to this. So Marxism is 1800s era, and it's a very brilliant theory, very original, which says that economic production is always separating those who own the means of production and those who are the laborers working for that. So it says that there are oppressors and oppressed. So the workers are oppressed and the people who own the means of production are oppressing them. And therefore the solution is a revolution to overthrow. This is Marxism basically, and it's a violent solution. And so therefore you can see all the wokeism has got violence in it because it comes out of that. Then what happened is the second wave of Marxism happened in the Frankfurt during World War II, and that's called cultural Marxism. And that said that the cultural means of production like Hollywood, Bollywood, education, religion, cultural means of production is also exploitation, not just economic means of production. And so the cultural means of production is controlled by certain elites, and they are the oppressors. And that's also a way to oppress the masses. So now they are being oppressed economically, they are being oppressed culturally. Now this is how Marxism was when it arrived in the US, when the Nazis drove the Marxist communists out, so they needed a home, they came to America. Mostly they came to Columbia and Berkeley. And so the Berkeley part of it, they tried, all of them tried to bring Marxism in America, but it failed because Americans like free enterprise, like capitalism, like you said, and they're not willing to change for this. But then when the civil rights riots happened, race riots in the 60s, when the race riots happened, blacks, whites and all that, these people sitting in Berkeley understood that the way to bring Marxism in America is through races. Create a race war for the oppressed blacks fighting the oppressor whites, make that Marxism, and you will win over the blacks. So this whole idea of racism entered Marxism, while Marx himself did not want race to be a category or religion to be a category. He said it's only economic. He said we should unite all the workers of the world against the people who own the industry and so on. And he said it should not separate religion, race, any of that. But these people, Marxists in America, brought race as a part of this whole thing. Now, this was just a very small sleeper cell in universities. This kind of Marxism was a sleeper cell in universities. And they invented some theories like critical race theory, critical legal theory. They invented these kind of things. The Muslims joined as oppressed. Muslims joined. After 9/11, they were on the run. People were after them, attacking them. But they got a lot of funding from Islamic countries in the Middle East. And that funding went and bought off leftists in America, leftists in universities. And so the leftists in universities started bonding with the Muslims. And Muslims brought the money and leftists brought the brains. The Muslims brought the ground forces to fight and all that, emotion, and the leftists brought the intellect. So there was a marriage between that, and that became woke. So now the left in America has not only the traditional poor people who are suffering from means of production and economically, but also blacks and also Muslims. This is very interesting. So during the Obama era, when there was this Black Lives Matter movement, because George Floyd got killed, which is very sad in a very tragic way, so it aroused the white guilt. A lot of white liberals, because of their guilt, started supporting this movement, and now this movement became known as woke. And so woke is traditional old-fashioned Marxism for poor people plus race, revolution from black side, plus Muslims against Jews and also against other non-Muslims. So this became the core of the woke movement. And then the LGBTQ joined in. They said, "हम भी exploited है, हम भी we are also oppressed, हम भी जाएंगे." So now they also joined in. Then the Dalits came. There's a huge Dalit voice and movement in the woke. Dalits are very solidly, and Harvard and all these places bring Dalits, fund them. All kind of these woke movement all over is now really got large amount of Dalits involved in this. And now guess what? Who's the latest getting in? Khalistanis. This is not very, this is serious stuff. So there's a whole history of the evolution of this woke movement. And the sad thing is that the social media people who are billionaires, you know, Facebook and YouTube and whatnot, all these people, they became woke and they started censoring. So a guy like me would get censored all the time. Warnings that, you know, you are violating this, violating that, because, and then this whole weapon of Islamophobia that, you know, if you say something that is critical, you'll be called Islamophobic and we really go after you legally, or you ruin your reputation. So this has become a very serious problem, and I've been writing about it for about 15 years, written books on it, but only now that Trump is fighting it, it has become safe for me, because now I can say, "Arey, Trump bhi kar raha hai," right? Although he's just started, but he's got the power and the authority, and his whole team. I was invited by the Trump transition team to Washington for 4 days as a VIP guest, and I went and had a lot of meetings and a lot of private conversations to understand what this new thing is about, because this is a tsunami that's going to change the world. This is a tsunami not only for America, but they're really going to hit hard and push back this whole leftist by many years. They're going to push them back. And so I wanted to understand it, and I found that the people being nominated and into the cabinet are extremely intelligent people. Don't underestimate them. And I also found that the Republican elite, in tens of thousands who came to Washington to celebrate this, are very sophisticated people. They are not, we were told that they are uneducated and they are fascists. I mean, that is all stupid propaganda, because they are extremely smart people. I got to make many friends, and I want to continue these friendships now because I found them really good people, very bright and intelligent. So, you know, I think the American politics is changing. It's going to now become different, and this will also impact the whole world, because they will affect, they will say, okay, now after Trump has shut down the DEI in the US, he will say NATO should shut it down because we don't want to fund NATO. US already withdrew from WHO, and then they will say, okay, if you want us back, you have to change, you know, your policies. So there will be foreign implications also. And the question is India going to follow around again? Okay, US gone this way, we'll go that way also. Or does India have its own ideas? I haven't seen true intellectual leadership from India. India is doing very well under Modi, I have no doubt. I'm happy about it. But the potential of this great civilization and what all it offers has not been realized. Long answer, but I hope you're satisfied that I've explained to you the Americanization of Marxism.
Sir, I just have one question. What do you think is the solution for this problem in Bharat?
So the solution is sitting right in front of us. You have to raise a voice. You are a filmmaker, you have to raise a voice. I can work on these kind of topics, as you know. So we are here in Bombay, you guys can incite the film. I was with Vivek Agnihotri a couple nights ago at his house, and he wants to talk about these things now, you see. So as more people raise the awareness of parents and of you know, all kind of people, that India has gone into the wrong direction, it will have to, the government and the politicians will have to listen at some point in time. But it would be nice if, rather than responding to public pressure, if they would think of it on their own. Do you know that Niti Aayog has not wanted to launch our books? The Observer Research Foundation is sold onto these ideas and they don't want to do anything to do with it. It's very interesting. We've looked for these you know, opportunities, Now, there is a law society in Delhi, Supreme Court lawyers who invited me day after tomorrow to give a talk on all this. They've read the book, they've seen it, and they know what it's about, and that's good news for me, the legal people. The law department and the law, departments in Delhi University have invited me. So there is interest there. So what happens is, one person who's connected with a certain organization can open the doors. Like in Mumbai, it's Ratanji. Ratan Charda has opened this event and other events. And so, and I feel that you guys can do that. You can, I'm going to be back in July, August. So we can have a longer discussion. So you need to read the stuff and then bring it to the attention of people. If you want us to give you 5 copies, 10 copies because you want to go and get it to the right people, we'll be happy to do that, because we are not here to making money. We are here to actually giving knowledge for transformation of people, and we'll work with you to do that.
I can assure you one thing, I'm going to do, and what I feel is that we should have a talk with Sant Samaj, because they are the right person who can be included in this thing. And I'll definitely go and speak with them, because I'll be staying with them only, the Parishad. और I think जब सब संत लोग सब मिलके ऐसी चीजें उठाएंगे और एक ग्रासरूट लेवल तक ये चीजें जाएंगी.
बहुत बढ़िया.
I'm there in the Kumbh from 10th to 14th, so I'll be happy.
Sorry?
From 10th to the 14th, I'm there at the Kumbh.
My name is Dr. Rajesh Sarvanya. I am founder of Vivekananda Youth Foundation. So I have your book, Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Power, 5 Battlegrounds. So how will we correlate your current book with this book? What is the role of AI in raising the children?
So AI is raising children. AI is going to be the intelligence which is already taking over education, and all the chat, all the social media, all the so much stuff that is being produced, the content is being produced, is AI produced, by AI. So AI is not neutral. Don't think AI is neutral. AI is trained with the bias of the people who own it and control it. So now the Qataris have started a AI project. It's called Falcon, the bird, which is a desert bird. So it's a nice name, Qataris. They brought in top AI engineers from around the world because they have a lot of money, and they're going to do a large language model in Arabic, using their ideology to train this model. So this is going to be like a child which has gone through a training of the Arab ideology, and this is going to be turned loose. They are giving very cheap, very good terms to get more and more people to start using it as an open source. So the Chinese are developing. They have this a couple of new initiatives in the last 10 days that they are promoting, and of course the Americans have a whole lot of their products. So what is happening is we don't have a product. India does not have a product. So we are going to use this one platform from here or platform from there, किसी और के platform पर हम चलाएंगे. तो हमारी गाड़ी किसी और के platform पे चलेगी, which means they make the rules. They can shut us off any time. We'll always be begging कि हमको H1B visa चाहिए और आपका platform भी चाहिए, because we have not done in our work. Why haven't we done it? Chinese billionaires who made a lot of money selling cheap Chinese labor to the Americans, they reinvested that money to make futurist products. They developed drones, they developed robots, they developed AI, they developed quantum computing, solar. They are top in number 1 or 2 in every technology. Indian also wanted to use cheap labor and export tech and all that, but Indian did not reinvest it in making products. Indian put that money into their pocket and said, हम बड़ा billionaire बन गए, हमने ये वो स्विट्जरलैंड में खरीद लिया, इतने 50 स्टोरी की बिल्डिंग बना दी है, all that kind of stuff. So it was more and we have looked at them as idols. उनको idol worship कर रहे हैं कि भी ये बहुत अमीर है, उसको idol worship कर रहे हैं. But the real fact of the matter is, I consider it socially irresponsible to take tech people and rent their brains at 3 times the value. आपने किसी को X dollars, X rupees में hire किया और 3x में रेंट कर दिया, अपना तो पैसा बन गया, उसको भी बन गया, उसकी भी लाइफ अच्छी बन गई, मिडिल क्लास बन गई, पर देश में टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं आई, क्योंकि जो लोग जिनका सबसे टॉप दिमाग है, बना सकते हैं ये टेक्नोलॉजी, उनको तो हमने किराए पर बेच दिया. We have rented these out to Microsoft and Facebook and all those people. We've rented our brains. China has not rented its brains. China is saying, okay, तुम यहाँ बैठकर Chinese चीज़ें बनाओ. When China sends students to America, एक तो वो their STEM education. They don't go to study history and human rights and nonsense like that, but like our people go. हमारे लोग कितने जो leftist universities में हैं, वो अमेरिका में पढ़े हुए हैं, but they have not studied STEM and technology. They have studied these oot-patang things, okay? So they bring back that woke ideology into India. China does not send people to study woke ideology in America. सीधी बात है. And also while Indians settle there because job opportunities नहीं है ये वो, Chinese 95% or more come back. So you see China's strategic investment in educating the brains, bringing them back and making Chinese products. We are not doing that. So you see you could say the billionaires have a moral responsibility and the government has moral responsibility. So that is where you have to put the pressure. So how will AI impact the future of the world? The book you just bought, which I autographed, you read it, that's what the book is about. It will create more haves and have-nots within the country and between countries. It will have an effect on free will, your ability to think for yourself. So read it. There's lots written there on the impact that AI is going to have. And when I started talking about all this many years ago, people were not interested. They were not wanting to believe this. They were saying, "आप क्या sensational बातें कर रहे हो? क्या science fiction कर रहे हो?" Now everybody is talking about it in the last 1 or 2 years since ChatGPT came out, and that's only the beginning of this huge AI tsunami which is going to happen.
I just wanted to also add, you asked about how AI affects this new book, and I wanted to tell you that this whole Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Sustainability and Peace in Delhi, which was started with the funding of the Indian government. Now they have outside like Samsung and other companies who want to fund it. And the essential idea is that they do programs for social emotional learning, and which means the child is given social emotional learning and data is collected constantly. Every time they do, every step of their education, before they do a problem, after they do a problem, their views of their family, what do they do in their free time, everything is mapped systematically. And that is why big companies are funding this, because they want data for their AI systems. Yeah. So this is a huge danger, because the children's emotional map is being mapped out by companies like Meta. And so this is another big danger. No parent has consented to this, but this is happening. This is how data is being used through social emotional learning.
So this is Advocate Parth Patani here, and I have a very quick and precise question regarding the alliance between the Islamists and the Marxists. I mean, is it an alliance merely of convenience, or does it have some philosophical or ideological basis to it? Because on the face of it completely feels like it's an alliance of convenience.
So I answered it in the history of Marxism coming to America and said that Marxism is about oppressor-oppressed. So if I could convince them that, bald people are oppressed, and I can get million signatures that all the bald people are oppressed, hamare against ho raha hai, ye wo ho raha hai, and we'll also become oppressed and we'll get quota. So that's how it's going. Muslims have been very successful in convincing the left that we the Muslims are oppressed. Palestinian became the major issue, then Kashmir got added, कि हम लोग Muslims हैं, all over the world हमारे को oppress किया जा रहा है. So and then if you criticize them, it is Islamophobia. देखो हमारे against Islam को भी criticize कर रहे हैं. So that sort of thing, they've really played it very well, and they're very united, and their religious leaders and the people who have the money to fund are working together, and they've created a global alliance with the left in the Western countries. But China is very smart. China has not China foreign countries में Islam को support करेगी to use them as people who will fight others. But within China, in the way there is a Muslim majority, उनको दबा के रखा हुआ है. You understand that? In China, the people within China who are citizens are really oppressed. Muslims are being oppressed. And outside, they are championing the Islam oppression against other countries, including in India. वो mischief कर रहे हैं. So these are all games, but our people are not seeing all that. And that's why our role is to create a framework so people can be taught how to think differently. That's what we are here for.
So my question is, you said Trump and his team are fighting against the current situation of war. The current government of India is also is it doing something, or we need more majority to do this thing, or how do you see in future which the predecessors or the followers of Modi can do this for the Indian society?
See, I'm not expert on Indian politics. I know only what I read like anybody else. I don't sort of spend too much time thinking internally. So, because I live elsewhere and I'm really deep into studying America for 50 years or more, but I haven't done the same for India. So I won't be able to tell you because I'm not the right person, but my feeling is that the priority of the government has been to win elections, and they're doing a good job of that, but hasn't really made huge shake-up. Like for example, Trump is shaking up the bureaucracy of the government. They're going to downsize, fire people, shut down. Now in India it would require taking on the whole IAS people, all this whole bureaucrat, babu shabu, unko, आधे लोगों को निकाल दो, नए लोग लाओ, change the whole thinking. I mean that kind of radical, dramatic revolution, I don't think is going to happen. But so I think there are certain things that require a Trump type of person. Okay. So also imagine the courage to just throw out all the illegal aliens. Now imagine if India were to say कि सब Bangladesh illegal aliens, Rohingya, ये वो उनको निकालो, planes में भरो उनको ले जाओ एकदम. I mean that's not likely to happen. I don't think we have that in us at the present time to stand up. Although it's a good opportunity, coming to think of it, because we can say अब अमेरिका भी कर रहे हैं तो वो illegal लोगों को निकाल रहे हैं, हम भी निकालेंगे. Why not?
There's some people who keep it very short because we have to get free. Some people will say that indirectly wokeism from all of the Islamist alliances and all the conflicts and issues they are raising is intended towards global government and dismantling all orders of the world. So what do you think about it?
No, but that is what I have said. The Marxism ultimately is a global world government. Dismantling all the nations is a world government. Wokeism is the latest incarnation of that Marxism. So they want to dismantle and create this ideological thing. But what they don't realize is that the Arabs have their own idea of a world government. It's called Caliphate. It has nothing to do with woke. It's a different idea. Okay. But they also want to dismantle governments and take over through Sharia and put in Sharia and have a Caliphate. That is their vision. The Chinese have a different idea of world dominance. They are putting this one belt, one road infrastructure all over Africa, poor countries, they're taking control. They're like colonizing, they're buying the real estate and the mines and the forts, seaports and all that. So China has its own vision of a world order. So these ideas of world order are also alternatives to each other. We don't have one. There is no Bharatiya world order, and nobody would listen to it, because even if we go and say हमारे ऋषि थे उन्होंने ये किया आप योगा सीख लो ये वो करो, it's not something with power. It doesn't have the power in it. It is just sort of nice to talk and so on. But there is no, when you say soft power, तो वो उसमें power तो होनी चाहिए ना. You cannot, if you don't have power, then what you're calling soft power is just sort of a culture. It's a nice culture. लोग ठीक करते हैं, enjoy करते हैं, तो बात नहीं है. उसमें power नहीं है. You understand? The difference between culture, spreading culture and soft power has to be that the soft power has to have power. Then you have to be able to say that these things have happened in the world because of our yoga, making the minds different, changing the minds of people, and these are the things that we have achieved and why they all love India and support us, because we have brought them, this is called soft power. But we can't say that.
With due regrets to people who wanted to ask more questions, already time up 6:45, 1.5 hours of this program. program. You can talk to Rajiv separately if there is something very serious you want to discuss. I thank all of you that you have taken a weekend time to come here. And I thank Rajiv ji and Vijay ji who have spared his time for this program. I hope this goes far, this message goes far. After the program, you can buy the book and get it autographed before you go home. Thank you so much.